Are the Maple Leafs about to make a bold and controversial roster move? Let's discuss that in the latest in Leafland. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. What's happening, brother?
Feeling pretty good. You know, we're tasting. We're just like barely tasting the start of training camp.
One more sleep, bud. One more sleep. And training camps open up. We'll start with some off-ice stuff, media weigh-ins. We'll get to hear from the guys. We get to break down some comments about how they're feeling after the off season. Everyone's going to be in the best shape of their life. And then the on-ice stuff starts, Thursday? And first game Sunday against the Ottawa Senators at 3:00. So before you know it, man, we'll be back. We'll be back breaking down real hockey games pretty soon. It's all coming within the week. It's the eve of camp today, and the training camp officially kicks off tomorrow. There is dog's going wild out there.
Dog is excited for the start of camp.
He's getting excited. He's getting rocked up and ready to go. There is some controversial news though that we need to discuss here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, kind of the latest in Leafland. And it really stems from a conversation that was had on TSN 1050's First Up yesterday. TSN Hockey Insider Darren Dreger was on the show. And it's not that he was suggesting that the Maple Leafs are going to sign Dylan Dube, one of the players that was involved in the Hockey Canada scandal. They were acquitted and will be eligible to sign with the team at some point over the next couple of months. I believe it was October 15th. They can sign with teams, and then they'll be eligible to play come December 1st. They can actually play in the NHL again. So that is the suspension, I guess, for these players. And, Dreger came out and said that, both Michael McLeod and Dylan Dube are not going to have problems finding homes. And then went on to mention that he wouldn't be surprised if Leafs GM Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs put their hat in the ring and take a decent swing at Dylan Dube. Mentions that there's obviously the history there. Dylan Dube drafted Brad Treliving drafted Dylan Dube back in the day, and there's ties there from their time in Calgary. He did say that Toronto's not considered a front runner, and that it doesn't mean that the Maple Leafs are going to sign Dylan Dube. He does not have that type of information, but did say that they still do want to improve in their forward group in the top six, and a player like that could fill that role, end quote, Dreger said. So bit of a controversial situation, obviously, for the Maple Leafs here. You want the team to have as many good players and add as much talent as possible, but that comes with great risk, and obviously with what went down and the perception of these players, I don't know if it's worth it to go down that path.
With this situation, I don't see the value. We're talking about a player who at best, the last few years in Calgary was a third line player. Yeah, he scored back-to-back 18 goals, but we're not you have to weigh the risk of the on ice, what he brings on the ice versus what he could potentially do off the ice and in your own locker room, right? I think in a situation like this, first off, you got to talk to the players already on the team and talk to your leadership group and be like, look, this is something we've talked about. What are you guys thinking about this? Because if you go and you bring we know what the backlash to a move can be. And the last thing you'd want to do to your organization is have your own players have to talk about something like this, how they feel about adding a player who's, a part of this this whole Hockey Canada scandal. And I just don't know, especially in a market like Toronto,
Right.
like it's not worth it. I talked to one person, they said, well, it will definitely be a story for a bit, but eventually, in a lot of these situations, it sort of fizzles out a little bit. I'm like, nah, but this is pretty bad. This is the situation. Like this was like I mean, I've been covering the how with the whole coverage of the whole story from the beginning. It was brutal, the whole situation, and so it's just really worth it. I understand these players were, found not guilty, and the NHLPA push for these players to have the opportunity to resume their NHL careers, and I get all that, but at the same point, teams have to make their own decisions to debate whether this is even worth, the backlash as we're talking like that. That's where I think it really comes down to.
Yeah. And it's a very valid point, right? Like, especially in Toronto, as you mentioned, the market is so loud, and the media is always going to be there. It could just take up too much attention and just create a bad vibe around the group. I'm not sure it's worth it for a player of his stature. Like, you talk about all the off ice issues that it could cause, but is it worth it? Sometimes some could make the argument like, okay, if this guy was a bona fide, top line winger, okay, sometimes you can deal with, that type of controversial backlash if he can back it up on the ice. I don't even think he's going to be able to back it up on the ice. Like, you look at Dylan Dube, and yeah, he had a couple of 18-goal seasons a couple of years ago in Calgary back in 21-22 and 22-23. But his final year at Calgary did not go well at all prior to the allegations and prior to the whole court proceedings. He only had 7 points in 43 games and was a -13 in 23-24. Obviously missed all of last season as he was undergoing the court case, but did play in the KHL. And so he did go over the season, play hockey, played 42 games in the KHL, and only had 4 goals and 11 points. Now, probably had a lot on his plate. Not sure if hockey was, the main thing on his mind at the time. But it's been a couple of years since this guy has played at a high level and a high enough level to fill what the Maple Leafs are suggesting, a guy who they want to fill a top 6 role. I'm not sure Dylan Dube is a top 6 guy anymore. Like, I think that time has passed. He hasn't played meaningful hockey either in like a year and a half. He's already 27 years old. He's a fairly undersized player. Like, he played with a little bit of grit. I'll give him that. But, at sub 6 foot, 185 pounds, he was already kind of behind the 8 ball. I don't know. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense from like any perspective. Like, his size doesn't really fit the mold of what Berube wants people to do out there. I don't necessarily think that he's a bona fide top 6 guy. So he's going to go in and compete with that big nucleus of bottom 6 players that the Leafs already have too much of. And it's just super controversial and could definitely backfire. The risk is not worth the reward for me. I would stay far, far away from a guy like Dylan Dube if I'm the Maple Leafs. I hope they don't go down this road. I really hope they don't.
And not only that, the guy it's not like he's a playoff performer either. He has 6 points in 22 games in his playoff career. So there's nothing on the stat sheet that says, yeah, you know what, might be worth a flyer. There isn't really anything there. And you talked about it, like, he's not really much of a Craig Berube type guy. He had a couple years ago, he had 136 hits, and that was a career. Like, all of a sudden he started hitting everything that moved, but like, there's nothing in what he has done that suggests to me that the Leafs need what he brings. He's not like not really a center, although some places list him as a center. The guy barely takes faceoffs. Like he does take faceoffs, but
Yeah,
very good at it.
probably more of a winger at this point. The other thing too is like it's interesting the timing where they're not eligible to even sign with a team until did you look that up? Is it October 15th or is it November 15th?
So
It's one of
October
those two.
15th, they're able to sign.
Right. And then they can
December 1st is when they're eligible
play.
to play again.
Right. Okay. So I was correct. So they can't even sign until October 15th. So the only other thing that I could have suggested was, all right, well, if you really want to see if he still, has it and is worth putting on your team, okay, maybe as a PTO, but you can't even sign him to a PTO. Like you can't even get him in preseason games and get a look that way, bring him into camp, see how he's meshing. You can't. You can't sign him until October 15th. And at that point, the contract's guaranteed. So it just there's a lot of question marks there, and I'm not sure the juice is worth the squeeze on this one. I'd stay pretty far away from Dylan Dube or Michael McLeod. The only player who I think will probably get another opportunity, like hands down, is going to end up being Carter Hart. I don't think it'll be here in Toronto.
No.
But some team will definitely sign Carter Hart.
There's already been a lot of suggestions. We know.
Yeah, I know he'll end up somewhere. And Darren Dreger is suggesting that teams are interested in bringing in Dylan Dube and Michael McLeod as well. I just don't think the Maple Leafs are in a spot where they need to, or that they have to. So,
and I think Formanton's gone back to Switzerland, I believe. Like I don't even think he's.
Yeah, he signed overseas. So I don't. I would imagine they gauged interest, and there's probably not a whole lot of interest out there for Formanton. So he was like, "All right, I'll go overseas and resume my career." I'd be shocked if he ended up getting back into the NHL. Sounds like it's really just 3 of the 5 that have a chance to play again. Don't think Toronto's the spot for those guys to play. All right, coming up on the other side, there was a big contract extension that was signed. Does it have impact on Anthony Stolarz' future here in Toronto? We'll get into that and more next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel. It lets me bet how I like to. I can bet on player props. I can bet SGPs, some live game action, or even bet on my futures that I like to bet on. It's quick. It's easy. It's the best way to add a little bit more energy to those Saturdays and Sundays. So you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as we are each and every day on the Locked On Leafs podcast, Monday to Friday, back to 5 days a week now with the season getting underway. Training camp starts tomorrow, and then we got games this weekend. Sunday, they play the Ottawa Senators, and I think they play them again on Tuesday. So back-to-back against the Sens in the next week to start off training camp. Again, you can find the Locked On Leafs podcast wherever you get a podcast. You can also subscribe on YouTube as well to see the video format of this great show. So, Dave, there's a contract extension that was signed yesterday that kind of blew me away in Chicago, and I guess I shouldn't really be all that surprised. Chicago's done a lot of weird things in over the last couple of years here, especially when it comes to some signings, some trades, and money and whatever. Spencer Knight, the goaltender that they traded for, is part of the Seth Jones deal, getting Spencer Knight from Florida. Very highly regarded prospect once upon a time, was a first-round pick as a goaltender. Gets an extension with the Chicago Blackhawks. 3-year extension, $5.83 million to be the goaltender of the future for the Chicago Blackhawks. What was your reaction when you saw that number come out?
A little surprised just because I didn't even realize he needed a new deal. So that was my initial reaction. But the 3 years was like one that was interesting because he didn't spend a lot of time with the team between now and the end of the season. I know that he showed some good things.
15 starts. He had 15 starts with the Blackhawks, and they said, bam, we know everything we need to know. Signing him up to a near $6 million contract.
I mean, if you're Spencer Knight, you're loving it for two reasons. One, you get a nice pay bump. You're getting, as you said, I think it's 5.83 per year. And you get another kick of the can at it when you're 28.
Yeah, when the cap explodes at that point.
Like this works out perfectly for Spencer Knight for the Blackhawks. It's like, I get it. You're trying to build your team. You're trying to figure out where you want your future to be. I get all of that, but this is the type of deal that can, if not, like, there's now the pressure's on Knight to perform, and like you look at the team, it's not very good. It's like it doesn't align with what the Blackhawks like. I know the Blackhawks eventually want to take a step forward, but this ain't a team that's ready to really do it yet. They got a lot of young pieces that just haven't come into their own yet.
Yeah, but I mean, it aligns with like a timeline, right? Like goaltenders usually take a little bit to grow into themselves, and we've seen a lot of these goalies. They don't take off until they're mid to late 20s. So at 24 years old, over the next couple of years, you'll find out over the course of this contract if he is the real deal. Now, paying someone nearly $6 million just to find out if they're the real deal is questionable. I would say I think that's an absolute overpayment for someone who's played 95 games at the NHL level with a .904 save percentage, and he played 15 games for Chicago last year. Got a 312 goals against and an .896 save percentage in front of that putrid Chicago team. So they're really, I mean, I don't know. It's a very curious contract for me. Last year was his first full season at the NHL level, the first time that he never yo-yoed between the NHL and the American Hockey League. We know that he spent some, he had some time away from hockey a couple of seasons ago. So last year was his, first full season back in the NHL, I guess. But again, only played 38 games and didn't necessarily put up superb numbers. So where the Blackhawks got their valuation that he's worth 5.83 over the next 3 years is beyond me. I have no idea where they pulled those numbers out of that he deserves that, I guess. They're taking a shot. They're absolutely taking a shot, and they're hoping and praying that it works out. Obviously, when he was drafted, there was very high praise and a possibility that he could be a top 10 goaltender in the NHL if he developed properly. I'm not sure if they're going to develop him properly in Chicago, but they're taking the chance that he turns into that. We'll see if it works. That's all I can say is we'll see if it works. He hasn't shown me anything that suggests that he's worth that type of money or that he's on the road to being that guy. You put up a sub 900 save percentage in 15 games. I don't know what that means for you, especially since the team didn't get better either. Like sometimes you're only as good as your defense, and the defense in Chicago's not that great. The whole team not that great. So very questionable decision for them to give him that type of money. It's a lot of money, and it muddies the water for the goaltending market, I'll say. And that's where this kind of connects back to Toronto. So for those who say, why are you guys talking about Spencer Knight and the Blackhawks? Well, because now this makes Toronto's decision a little bit more difficult when it comes to Anthony Stolarz and his impending contract discussions or ongoing contract discussions because he needs a new deal. His expires at the end of the season. Sounds like both teams have been interested in negotiating a new deal and getting something in place. And I just wonder if this muddies the water a little bit. Why don't we come back and discuss how this could potentially impact the Maple Leafs and the Anthony Stolarz conversation? We'll do that next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
Today's edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast is also brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire somebody yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates fast. The last thing you want to be is in a bad spot where the pressure's on, and obviously every day without the right person can be a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs comes in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidate right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring Indeed is all you need.
The Locked On Leafs podcast continues. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as always. And we're heading in training camp. Just one more sleep, ladies and gentlemen. And the Maple Leafs get back to Toronto. And well, I'm sure they're all back in the city by now. But they'll be back. There'll be media sessions to react to. We'll get to hear from Austin Matthews. We'll get to hear, from Matthew Nyes, William Nylander, Tavares, the whole crew, Morgan Riley, who apparently is in, quote, the best shape of his life. You hear that a lot these days, right? Usually from the veterans. I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see how it works for you. I've heard that before, and typically it turns out the exact same way. I'd imagine Anthony Stolarz is in pretty good shape coming off the summer and heading into a contract year, a platform season for Anthony Stolarz. And I asked you before we went to break here, Spencer Knight getting $5.83 million AAV over the next 3 years. Would that have impact? Like if you're Anthony Stolarz, his agent and his camp, if you're looking around the league and saying, hey, that guy's making that much money and I am way better than him, I've put up far better numbers than him, are you concerned that this contract that Knight got could impact what Stolarz's ask could be on an extension?
Well, what it just does is just adds another comparable in terms of this is what this guy signed for. So how can you justify giving me this much?
Yeah,
that's what it comes down in any negotiation. Comparables and what the current market dictates always comes into play. I get it. Spencer Knight is a 25-year-old. Anthony Stolarz is a 31-year-old. But guess what? Anthony Stolarz had a way better season than Spencer Knight and also played,
he's better. He's been better. He's proven at the NHL level.
Right. So there is that. Now, looking at the contracts and looking at the goaltenders that would hit the market if the season, like at the end of the year, if all these guys were to get to free agency, it's not there's not many goaltenders hitting the open market as much as people think. Like, yeah, Jacob Markstrom, but we're talking about a 35-year-old Jacob Markstrom. Sergei Bobrovsky is going to be 37, right? Stuart Skinner and Philip Gustafsson are the only ones that are kind of like in the prime years, but we know what the deal is with Stuart Skinner and whether you can't trust the guy as far as you can throw him.
Yeah.
Like the goaltending market ain't great. There's a lot of leverage for these goalies right now. And I think this is probably why the Leafs are trying to get this deal done now, because they do not want a situation where Stolarz gets closer to free agency. And the closer you get, the closer you're thinking about, okay, maybe I just want to give this a shot.
Yeah, you would think that. And obviously, the Leafs and Stolarz might have been close. Like apparently there has been ongoing discussions with the two parties and maybe they were close, but I wonder if Knight's contract makes Stolarz's camp kind of step back and go, oh, were we underselling ourselves? Were we underselling ourselves here? Like, because when we discussed a potential Stolarz deal a year ago, we're thinking, or not even a year ago, like a month ago on the podcast, we're talking about, okay, well, what's a deal look like for him? Maybe between 4 and 5. Like, he's still a tandem goaltender, not a starting goaltender, I guess. And tandem goalies look to make around, between 4 and 5 million as like a 1A type of guy. But like now with Spencer Knight's contract, like I don't know. I guess does Chicago look at Knight and say, you're a 60 game starter year in, year out, and that's what we're paying you to be, and that's what we expect you to be at 5.8, perhaps. And if you're Toronto, you're going to make that case like, well, Knight's going to play 50, 55 games for the Blackhawks. You're going to play 40, 45 and be in a tandem. So, we can't pay you true starters money. We got to keep you in that, tandem range. I don't know if that's going to fly with Stolarz' camp after they see this type of money get thrown out for a goaltender that's not as good as Stolarz. But I do wonder if this could have some impact, and maybe the Leafs will have to pay up a little more than they wanted to, say maybe a month or so ago.
Yeah, and this is the risk that's involved in any sort of these deals, right? Where, oh, why couldn't we have signed him earlier before it went up? Well, two sides have to be motivated to get a deal done, right? My concern always is with goaltenders is term, how much term you get them.
Yeah.
Because we've seen so many long-term deals handed out to goalies, and they always, not often do they say, yeah, that deal was a slam dunk, right? And so, I mean, we just saw Carey Price get his deal dealt to San Jose. The guy hasn't played since 2022, technically.
Yeah.
Like, you're paying Carey Price whatever you're going to pay Carey Price, but like the long-term ramifications of deals is goalies are it's a tricky position to have to pay exactly what they want, but also trying to keep the term fair for both sides. And I think that's probably where the Leafs are right now is what's the right term to give a 31-year-old when you've got a guy like Joseph Woll potentially in the wings, and you're maybe hoping that one of your other goalies that you're trying to develop right now, and Peksa and Akhtiamov, can they be like, you got other younger ones here that maybe can go into something there. So I think the Leafs are in a position where, yes, they have an abundance of goaltenders, but when you got a guy like Stolarz who put up the numbers he did last year, that's the reason why you made the playoffs and finished first in your division. You had really good goaltending. And it's just that the injury last year with the knee injury, you always have to be wary of those things. That's my only concern with Stolarz. It's not the production. We know he can produce. Can he stay healthy? That's what it comes down to.
And he was a dog in the playoffs. I mean, he was the game one starter for the Maple Leafs, right? Ended up playing 7 games, and he got hurt, unfortunately, and that was a big turning point in the series. But he had 219 goals against in the playoffs, right? You look at his stats from last season, he led the league in save percentage, 926 save percentage, a 214 goals against average. Only played 34 games, sure. So that he did not play as many games as Joseph Woll. So that is something to consider, a smaller sample size. But you would think that he would like to play 40 to 45 this year, potentially, depending on who gets the hot hand more often. But yeah, he's proven to be the better goaltender between him and Spencer Knight. Even look at the last 4 years, he's had a save percentage north of 917 or better in 3 of the last 4 years. So again, that's as a backup and as a tandem goalie. So it's not necessarily as a true bona fide number one, but when he's playing, the guy's playing, right? The guy's got some pretty good stats. Actually, you can go back to 5-6 years. Last 6 years, he's had a save percentage north of 917 in 5 of the last 6 years. So he's proven at the NHL level that he can get it done. He can stop pucks, save pucks. Whether or not the Maple Leafs view him as a $6 million goaltender now, I don't know. It's going to be fascinating. That's a contract standoff that certainly got a whole lot more interesting with the Spencer Knight deal now to think about for both parties, I suppose. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe we wake up to a nice big fat contract on the morning of training camp, and we could put this to bed. Maybe something was tucked away a couple of weeks ago and signed, sealed, and delivered, and it's going to be announced on training camp. Maybe, perhaps, it's possible. But yeah, I'll be excited to see what happens here. I think Stolarz gonna have another good year too. I really, really do. Think he's a good goalie. I think he's a pretty solid goaltender. Anything else that you any final comments about the Leafs, about Stolarz, about anything?
No, I think we'll see what they have to say at the first day of I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of Mitch Marner questions. So I know people are really excited to hear about him in these situations. But I think unfortunately, we're gonna have to hear more about it, and players are gonna have to hear more, listen, answer more questions about it. But curious to see where what else is gonna be talked about heading into the after media day.
Yeah, it's always interesting. So we'll have a lot to break down after they speak. Certainly, we'll hear from the guys. We'll play some of the audio, and we'll do that. That'll be in a couple of days. But one more sleep tomorrow. The guys start talking. So probably for tomorrow morning show on the morning of the start of training camp, we'll definitely go through kind of the camp storylines to watch and the camp battles that are about to ensue. So that'll be on tomorrow's podcast. That'll do it for us here today on the show. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the podcast. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content Monday through Friday. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_Morassutti, and follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. I'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. The start of training camp will be here, folks. Get a good night's rest. The real stuff begins tomorrow. Until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.